appreciate everybody for joining us this morning. We have an exciting roundtable to discuss the last connection on Interstate 49 in the state of Missouri. So should be an interesting topic. My name is Todd Kimker. I'm the transportation team leader for Bartlett and West and a project manager. And I'm going to be moderating today's session. I'll introduce the panelists here in a little bit. A few things to note. We are using Zoom today, as you can tell. You should have a chat box that you can open up and type in any kinds of questions that you might have. Encourage you to do so. It is a roundtable that will be asking our panelists different questions. Do note that it's going to default that those questions come to the panelists and to myself. So don't be surprised when you're not seeing questions come from other people. Feel free to go ahead, type in those questions, and not everybody will see the questions you're asking. So please feel free to do so. We'll work those in as we go. And if we get a lot of questions, we'll even, we may follow up to some with emails if we can't get to them today. But please go ahead and ask the questions. We'd like to make sure we're making this valuable for yourself. So I'm going to start today by just telling you a little bit about the project so that you have a little bit of a primer on what the project is as we jump into the roundtable. So as I said, this is the last connection on Interstate 49 in the state of Missouri. It's also known as the Bella Vista Bypass. You can see in the green, that is the sections of the Bella Vista Bypass. The red is Route 71. That kind of is the reason we are doing the bypass. So south of the Arkansas line, those projects have been happening. This project actually is going to tie directly into a project that Emory Sapp finished up in October. So this is the portion we're talking about today, is the Missouri line north up to the interchange near Pineville. It's 5 miles. It was a construction bid of $58 million. And it's been a project that has been desired for many years, but finally the MoDOT was able to get a build grant, which actually created the financing that allowed the project to happen. So there were some key aspects of the project that made it ripe for some innovation, and is where some of this alternative technical concept came from that we'll be spending a lot of time talking about today. One of the reasons that was really able to have some innovation is this was an extremely heavy earthwork job. It had an just extreme amount of earthwork. It's through the Ozark Mountains. There's a reason this road wasn't probably originally built here. It is rugged terrain that is just difficult to construct. So in the 5 mile section, it had 5 million cubic yards of earthwork. I mean, it was just a tremendous amount. 100-foot plus cuts and fills. I mean, you were going through a 100-foot cut and immediately, the mountain dropped off and you hit the 100-foot fill. So it was just an extreme terrain that was difficult to build in. That created also, in addition to trying to make that an efficient process, it created very large drainage structures. You can imagine if you're in a 100-foot fill and, in this valley, you have water flowing through it and you have very long, large box culverts and such that just anything we could do to shorten up a box culvert or change a box culvert had very big impacts very quickly because they're such large structures. And then it also had 2 interchanges that became a lot of the focus of the project design. One at Route 71, which is that north connection where it splits off. So that was more of a directional interchange. And then it had a standard diamond interchange at Route 90. Both of those items were big cost items that allowed some potential innovation. So the participants in the project, the owner is MoDOT. It was a MoDOT ran project. The contractor was Emory Sapp & Sons, or is Emory Sapp & Sons. And then Bartlett and West, we're working directly with the contractor through the ATC process that we'll talk more about here very quickly, and then designing the project itself, the changes that were made. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We do have a few slides that we'll bring up during some of the different questions. I do have prepared questions today that we'll start with, but then we'll try and work in the audience questions as we can, as they make sense. but wanted to introduce the panelists today from those three entities. Craig, you want to kick us off with just tell us who you are and what your role on the project is.
Sure, thank you, Todd. My name is Craig Switzer, and I'm a project manager with the Missouri Department of Transportation, Southwest District. I've been with MoDOT about 22 years. I'm based out of Joplin. I handle projects in Barton, Jasper, Newton, and McDonald counties. This project being the most prominent one right now. And my role on the project was scope, schedule, and budget. And my role was to oversee the design of the project and to lead the ATC process from the owner's end.
Josh, you want to follow up? I think you're muted, Josh.
Yep, sorry about that. Yeah, my name is Josh Deerhoff. I'm with Emery Sapp & Sons, Vice President of Major Pursuits. So really took this project on from when they posted the early plans back in October. Started looking at it in regards to just base plans as well as ATC. Carried that on through the estimating phase and early handoff to our construction team. And Daniel's on our construction team, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, my name's Daniel Hoyt. I'm the project manager for Emery Sapp & Sons on this project, and been involved with this job since the award date, and I'm involved in the day-to-day construction operations.
You want to finish up, Bruce?
Sure. My name is Bruce Green. I'm project manager here at Bartlett West. Retired from MoDOT a few years ago. Been working with Bartlett West since then. I was the, I guess, the design PM on this for Bartlett West. Been involved with the project. Started with Josh back in last fall in October, and been on it ever since. And it's been quite a ride.
Well, thanks, guys. Again, I got some prepared questions that I'll start with today, and feel free as the participants. I don't think you'll be able to unmute and ask questions verbally, but probably best anyway to go ahead and use the chat window. You should be able to find that on the bottom of your screen. Should be an icon to pull that chat window up, and feel free to ask any questions you want. So to kick it off, I will start with a question for Craig, and I think you have a couple slides prepared for this one that I'll pull up. What is the alternative technical concept process, and why exactly did MoDOT choose that for this project? Okay,
so the alternative technical concept process is an innovative contracting option we have here at MoDOT, and this process allows the contractor to propose changes to the MoDOT provided base design before the contract is awarded. And so the important thing here is before the contract is awarded. And I'd also like to highlight the requirement for a base design. That's a complete biddable set of plans and quantities provided by the owner. And so that is available, and then contractors are then allowed to take that base set of plans, and if they choose to pursue ATCs, to make changes to those plans, and any changes in quantities and therefore cost savings as a result can be included in that contractor's bid. And so if you're familiar with the value engineering proposals that happen after award of the contract, think of this as a value engineering proposal that occurs before the award of the contract. And so the goal of our process in general is to allow our industry partners to participate in a cooperative effort to find best value solutions for our projects. And we really need to emphasize it is a cooperative effort, and it is key to the success of this process. We as the owner have to be flexible and open to the new ideas the contractors bring forward, and we have to work with the contractors to find cost savings. But at the same time, we have interests to look out for as well. We have to hold those contractors to our design criteria and any goals and constraints of the project. And so it's an iterative process. There's the option to do one-on-one meetings to work together and to work through the details of a certain contractor's ATC pursuit. But once those ATCs are approved, contractors have the option of including those cost savings in their bid. And by doing that, that improves their chances of being the successful low bidder. And so the way this works is each contractor who has approved ATCs and elects to bid those ATCs, they receive their own set of plans. It's a confidential set of plans that has their design, their quantities, and it's theirs to bid on and theirs alone. Bidding on ATCs is optional. They still have the option of bidding the base plan. So if market conditions, so on and so forth, change during the time between their ATC approval and when the bid is actually due, they do have the option to go back to the base plans. And it also leaves it open to contractors who don't have ATCs. They can still bid the base plans. And so the idea is that the ATC bids will be lower due to the cost savings involved, but that's not guaranteed, as you can have other contractors also bidding the base plans. And so the slide you see on your screen now on the left-hand side, it contains a general description of what ATCs can be. And for the most part, we're looking at a design change, but it can also be other items, standards and specifications. We limited them to federal highway and AASHTO publications. They could be documents from other states or manufacturers that have been pre-approved. Also materials or products or construction methods. Keep in mind, we're not necessarily looking for cost savings. We could be looking for construction time savings. And this project had a pretty aggressive completion schedule along with it. And so we didn't just want to see cost savings, but we also looked at construction time as well. And we were pretty open. In the past, we've limited ATCs to certain items or certain parts of the project, but not much with this project was off limits. We did have a few constraints they had to follow. It's an interstate. It's got to be interstate standards, for example. Also, the right-of-way had been purchased. Most of the utilities moved. So stuff like that were offered up as constraints. They had to stay within those. And for the most part, the only requirements we put on them is what you see there in the column on the right. We'd set the goals are an owner established set of goals for the project. And we had, I think, 5 goals, maybe 6 for this project. We ranked them in priority order. And we use that as the basis for evaluating ATCs and for the decision making. And so when we got into an ATC and trying to figure out whether it was the right fit for this project, we always had those goals and those priorities to fall back on to make that decision as the owner. We required they provide a product equal to or better than the project in the base plans the ATC replaced. And that statement was totally determined by the MoDOT review team and Federal Highway, who was also part of that team. And ATCs had to be approved by MoDOT and Federal Highway before they could be included in the contractor's bid. So that's a pretty quick high-level overview of the process, but hopefully it gives you a good idea of what we were trying to accomplish. As far as why we chose the process, the ATC process on this project, there were really 2 major drivers in that decision. And the first, of course, was budget. We were looking at this thing from a cost standpoint. We didn't have near enough budget in our STIP in order to cover the project, even with the $25 million build grant that we received. And so that really forced us into looking at cost savings ideas up front. And we needed to find that significant cost savings in order to get the project back in budget. And the consequence for coming in over, if you don't have the STIP budget to cover the project, the money has to come from somewhere. So you got to pull it from other projects. That could cause stuff to get delayed. And here at MoDOT, our STIP is a public commitment, and that situation needs to be avoided at all costs. And for those that don't know, our STIP is our 5-year statewide transportation improvement plan. It's just a list of all the projects we have and the schedule on which we propose to build those. And so the second major driver in that decision is the progress of the MoDOT design at that point. We had a set of base plans and they were largely complete, but the problem was they were completed in 2007. So yeah, 2007. So they've been sitting on the shelf for a significant number of years. And during those years, there'd been a big shift in MoDOT's design philosophy. We call it practical design. It started around the time the plans were being finished up, early to mid 2000s. And it's just a context sensitive design that focuses more on purpose and need for the project rather than applying blanket across the board standards. And there are some flexibility in a lot of those standards and so on and so forth that we can use. If you'd like further reading, that's in our engineering policy guide category 143. It's on our website. But another point of that design progress was MoDOT staff could take those base plans done in 2007, and we had the time to go through those and sweeten them up a little bit, finish them up, put them in our latest version of the design software, update to the latest standards. So we had about a year, maybe 9 months, 10 months to do all that, but we didn't have the time and internal resources to go back and completely redesign those plans with practical design in mind. And so this put us in a situation where it was a perfect opportunity to engage some of our industry partners. And by industry partners, I mean contractors and design consultants to assist us in this redesign effort. And under these circumstances, ATCs offered the best opportunity to do that. It offered cost savings for us, and it offered the opportunity for contractors to pursue ATCs, to get a lower bid, and to potentially win the job that way. And so that's how we came about using ATCs for this project.
Thanks, Craig. Definitely a complex process, but I appreciate you trying to put that in a quick summary there for us. Can you, I guess we'll stick with Craig for a minute, and I know you have another slide for this one. Can you compare and contrast the ATC process with other forms of innovative contracting that MoDOT uses, design build, and other types of things that you tend to use?
Yeah, sure. If you go to my next slide, and this is straight out of MoDOT Engineering Policy Guide 147, if you'd like a further read on any of these options. But you see on the left there, the three options, innovative contracting options we have for contract time. And these weren't really a good fit for this project. We already knew Arkansas's completion date. I think they'd awarded their last set of projects in somewhere around July. And so we were awarding in early January of the next year. And so we already knew about when their completion date was going to be. And so for us, it didn't really make sense in trying to get the contract done early. If the Arkansas side wasn't done, then we weren't going to be able to open the road anyway. So, and the schedule was aggressive as it is, so we didn't really see any sense in spending extra money to try to get our side done early. Those you see on the upper right-hand side, the alternate design requirements, which ATC is one of those. The alternate and optional pavement bidding. Our project also has this. It allows contractors to bid both, or to bid either or on an asphalt or a concrete pavement option. And the add alternates at the bottom. We typically use that when additional items of work may be awarded if the bid comes in with budget, but those additional items are optional. And so we didn't really have any optional items we could break out of this project and award as an add alternate. And so that again just didn't really make sense with the specific situation we had in this project. The bottom two, project delivery methods, job order contracting, those are more geared toward on-call maintenance type work. So again, not really applicable to this project. And design build at the bottom, that was an option we seriously considered at the beginning. And we could have gone this route. We think it would have worked. However, we didn't really think it was the right fit due to the plans availability and the schedule we needed to enforce, and then the MoDOT staff workload itself. And so we went through a pretty strict risk assessment and a project delivery determination workshop where we sat down and talked about these options and went through the project and identified the risks and talked about timelines and all that. And so in the end, it just made more sense to go with design build. And we were looking, I will just note on this project, we were looking for bigger scope and bigger scale items for the ATCs. So we were trying to identify those high dollar cost items. And we felt that the ATC method versus the design build method led contractors more to pursue those high dollar, large impact items. And then we saved the smaller scale items for the post-award value engineering proposals on that.
Josh, do you want to add on from maybe the contractor side of how you guys view some of these different processes and options, and what works best for you all for different projects?
Sure. So just keeping it with the ATC versus design build kind of mechanism for providing a contractor project. Really, the ATC had great advantages on this job. It really allowed MoDOT to put it out for all the contractors, and really any contractor can bid the base design. So MoDOT got the benefit of having all the interested parties have an opportunity to pursue the project. You didn't have to chase any ATCs, and the ATCs really that you could come up with could be anything. You could have smaller items, larger items. From our perspective, MoDOT was really open to entertaining anything, was up front and discussing interest and what they didn't like about certain items. But so the ATC fit really well in this situation where MoDOT already invested significant time and effort in producing a base design that was a quality design. But as Craig mentioned, it's been on the shelf since 2007. So there left room for optimization on that. Whereas a design build avenue would have resulted in much higher design fees when you already spent and invested a significant amount of time for the base design. Both mechanisms have their place. Design build seems to be more suited where we see it being beneficial anyways when a base design isn't completed and a project needs accelerated for high demand, either due to traffic or other circumstances. So both have their place. Some of the things that go along with the ATC that a contractor has to keep in mind is often these jobs don't have any kind of stipend. So you got to do a thorough investigation of whether or not it's worthwhile to invest significant time or money in potential design. And you got to make sure you have an opportunity for an upside. So all those criteria weighed into our analysis of it, but we really think MoDOT did a great job picking the ATC method for this project to give them as many opportunities for project contractors to bid on the project.
Thanks, Josh. So I guess one more question on just the line of what the ATC process was related to this project. Craig, can you address how did the ATCs on this project differ from, I know MoDOT's used it on some other projects, but the rules of engagement were slightly different. So can you maybe address how it maybe was different on this project?
Yeah, and the biggest difference with this project was with previous projects, MoDOT had been responsible for furnishing the roadway and structural design plans for the approved ATCs. So on previous projects, either we'd use our internal staff or we'd hire a design consultant to help us produce those plans. Remember I said earlier, a contractor with approved ATCs gets a separate set of plans, gets a separate set of quantities. And so in the past, we had put that upon ourselves to furnish those. But for I-49, we really flipped that process on its head, and we made the design responsibility totally on the contractor. And so the contractor would be responsible for producing their plans and quantities with our team's oversight, of course. And we went through these with a fine-tooth comb and checked their quantities, made sure that we thought they were reasonable. But in the end, it came down to the contractor furnishing those quantities, and they took the risk on those quantities as well. But one thing I really want to bring up and caution everybody who's thinking about pursuing this process in this way is that it's a huge risk when you do this, and it puts a huge risk on contractors having to absorb that design cost. And like Josh mentioned, we do not pay a stipend for these type of jobs. And so the design costs have to be absorbed somewhere. And the contractors are going to roll those costs into their bid items. If they win, that's fine. That cost is recovered. If they don't win, that cost is lost. So there's no way to recover that if the contractor doesn't win. And so again, huge risk. And we thought for this project, it offered up enough opportunity for cost savings that we'd get some takers on that, and that we could still indirectly pay those design costs and still come out ahead on the savings. And I think the results of our bids bear that out. If you know anything about the project, we only got 2 bidders. We had one base plans bid was 68.4 million. And then Emory Sapp's winning bid was 58.5 million and change. And that does include design cost. And so still a difference of almost $10 million with the ATC bid winning and including design cost. And so from our perspective, that was a great investment. And one other contractor did have ATCs, but didn't bid the job. And so we did have, I would have liked to have seen more participation, but we got enough participation to know that our decision was the right one, I think, on this job. But again, I caution you, due to the contractor risk involved with that design work, we weren't sure if we'd get any pursuing the process. And I'd like to give kudos, Josh, to you and your team, Bruce, to give kudos to you guys for pursuing this so aggressively and giving us a very competitive bid.
Thanks, Greg.
Agreed. So next question related to kind of where you're headed with that, Craig. And so maybe I'll let the Daniel or Josh at ESS, whoever there wants to answer. What types of projects do you see being the most beneficial from the ATC? Where can the owner actually get some benefit out of this?
Really, from the contractor perspective, I think MoDOT did an outstanding job selecting this one. It fit all the criteria that we would recommend. It was a large scale project, left a lot of opportunity on scope and quantities for a contractor to think outside the box. It had limited restrictions. As noted earlier, it was a greenfield project. You weren't widening out an existing highway or a bridge where you got a lot of confines that really handcuffed opportunities. It was fairly quick on the delivery. That was another good one on MoDOT's side. They had the base design. They knew they wanted the project to get underway with a quick completion. So it didn't allow a full year to vet out a design on their side or redo the plans. It allowed the contractor to really look at the base design that was completed several years ago and update to modern standards today. So those criteria right there is what we believe works the best. The larger scale projects probably will produce more appetite. It does take the contractor some thorough evaluation to really decide if it's worth investing the time and energy. But the beauty of the ATC process is such that you don't have to necessarily pursue major items. MoDOT does a great job of entertaining smaller ATC items as well that could produce significant savings on smaller jobs as well. So MoDOT being flexible in what they entertain through an ATC process, just like they do in the value engineering process, really allows them to get a lot of interest from the contractors.
Thanks, Craig. You've maybe covered it already, but anything you would like to add as far as what types of projects you think MoDOT or others might want to consider as far as when ATC should be implemented?
Yeah, I'll echo what Josh said on the large scale projects with major pay items like earthwork. Look for those big bang for the buck items where redesign costs are considered, where the savings outweighs the cost. And also from an owner's perspective, you need to produce a set of plans, a set of base plans for these. So it works really well if you got a set of plans on the shelf that have been there for a while and you just haven't had the money or whatever situation may be to get that project underway. It's a good way to pull those off the shelf and get them under construction relatively quickly. Also, from an owner's perspective, look at your staff and your workload, and it's also a big help. It's a little less involved than going through a complete redesign or a design build pursuit. So I'd just throw in those additional items.
Thanks. So I've had a couple questions that were, what actually were the alternative technical concepts that we ended up using on this project, and how were they implemented? How did they save costs? That kind of line of thinking. So Josh, I think we actually have some slides that I can pull up that cover those. You want to cover that?
Sure. Yeah, if you want to pull up the slides, we can kind of walk through just the high level concepts of them. So looking at the project, as I mentioned, it's a greenfield project, and as Todd already mentioned, the terrain was extremely rugged. The screenshot you're looking at now, you can see the black line shows the existing contours, and to be honest, those aren't exaggerated much. It's there's some pretty steep terrain through there. The blue line indicates kind of the base design that was shown in the base plans that MoDOT provided. As we looked at the job, with earthwork being the most significant item on the project, we looked at ways to optimize MoDOT's base design related to the earthwork. The job was designed originally as a pretty much balanced project, and we kind of further evaluated that on ways to reduce cut and fill to keep it somewhat of a balanced project, but also reduce overall quantity. So as you can see here, this is probably the most significant change. This is only the southern half of the project itself, really from the Route 90 interchange to the state line. This profile adjustment here really significantly reduced the earthwork in that area. And as Todd mentioned, it also allowed some incidental savings on items such as drainage structures and such, where we were able to reduce lengths of boxes and pipes, et cetera. So that's kind of the first one from a high level perspective. And then if you move forward, the Route 90 interchange kind of worked in conjunction with the last slide. That was kind of the northern end of the ATC. This one was a little easier to identify, and I think Bartlett and West had some of the great thoughts in mind on this one. That the old ramp alignments were designed back in the middle 2000s, where more of a Cadillac design was provided, and now that with MoDOT's new standards and FHWA standards being more aggressive is preferred. So we looked at those ramps, tightened the alignments up. That also helped reduce large volumes of fill. Actually, the southern ramps itself, that ramp 3 had a significant fill that we was able to cut down. So this area really worked in conjunction with the profile adjustment. And then finally, this is the far north end of the project here, where 71, the existing is running right where the green line work is. That's existing Highway 71 today. You can see the original southbound alignment, and in red, the new southbound alignment that was proposed. Shifting that alignment closer to the new northbound alignment. Also modified some of the earthwork, but kind of a hidden gem in this one was it also allowed us to stay out of one of the major creeks running along the project that MoDOT had to get core permitting for. So there was a lot of attraction to this one as well. I don't think we really didn't get to recognize all the hidden benefits there, but everybody was excited to stay away from any of the creeks and minimize core impacts. So that's the major items that contributed to our ATC, and early on we looked at these, and it took a lot of time in evaluating these to prove that they're going to be worthwhile, but we had a lot of open conversations with our team, Bartlett West and MoDOT, to ensure that everybody was going down the right path on something that could be approved.
Josh, do you have any kind of impact as far as, I know they all blended together. So do you have a total value of anything that, how much you think MoDOT saved on that?
I think through our total submittal process with all the ATCs, we anticipated saving about $7 million.
And your total bid was 58, right?
Correct.
So I guess rough math, a little over 10% savings there.
Yes.
Okay. I guess, Craig, a couple detailed questions came in that actually alluded to some stuff Josh was talking about there. Can you address how the ATC process you handled both environmental and when the right-of-way was acquired and how that worked into the ATC process?
Yeah, I'll start with the right-of-way. The right-of-way was acquired. Don't quote me on exact dates, but it was in the 2005 to 2007 range. And I think we had some condemnation that might have went even up to 2009 or something like that. But anyway, the right-of-way was all acquired and cleared well before we kicked off this process. That was a constraint on the project, as we didn't want them to go and do anything with their ATC that would require us to go out and purchase more right-of-way. And the primary reason for that was the environmental. And we had an environmental impact statement on this project. It was done, I don't remember the original date, but it was done a long time ago. We were in our second reevaluation when we kicked off this project. And so what we did was we tried to clear the base plans through the reevaluation, and we tried to get all our permitting and stuff in place for that. Ideally before the award of the contract. It didn't quite work out that way. We had delays from the Corps of Engineers getting our 404 permit. It delayed our start date probably by about a month. But as part of that delay, we had planned on getting a revision to the permit once the project was awarded and the ATCs were in place. But because of that delay, we were able to go ahead and do that revision before the permit was issued. So that I think saved us a little. It saved us a little work. I'm not sure it saved us any time. Again, we were late getting the permit. But ideally, you'd have the environmental cleared and all the permitting in place for the base plans, and then just do a revision on anything affected by the ATC. And really the only thing that was affected was at some of the box culverts with the vertical alignment changes that Josh had showed you earlier. It resulted in some shortening and some lengthening of some box culverts. Therefore, the stream impacts had to be recalculated, and the realignment at the southbound lane at the north end. Good and Hollow Creek runs right along the west side there, and we were able to stay out of that. And so that really was a significant impact that was avoided with that ATC. So in the end, we came out ahead on our mitigation that was required as part of the project, just because we were able to avoid a lot of those impacts.
Thanks, Craig. So next question, I guess, Daniel and Bruce, you've been quiet so far. I haven't directed one at you, so get ready. I'll throw one your way. Maybe we'll start with Daniel, then go to Bruce. So what do you see as the biggest benefit to the project by allowing the ATC process?
I think Craig and Josh both hit on it, but obviously it's being able to generate cost savings to the owner. You know, you gain a different perspective from the contractor or the contractor designer team, and allow them to be innovative and come up with a different approach on the project that may allow them to be cut cost on the project. That could include using design standards that they're familiar with from working with other DOTs, or tailoring certain aspects of the project to their specific capabilities and strengths. And it could also involve using specialized equipment that the contractor has access to, maybe substituting materials for something that's more commercially available or has shorter lead times. So I think all that contributes to, or translates to, savings for the owner.
Yeah, I'll echo like everybody's comments too, but in addition, I think as being the design manager or leader on this process on this job, one of the biggest benefits was probably being able to bounce ideas back and forth off, the contractor and then them off us too. And we could, kind of tailor that design for their operations and get a feeling, for what needed to be done to provide the best, the most optimum project for them to build. The other thing is too, I think we were, that was helpful here was after the project's been under contract, it's been pretty fast paced. And a lot of times there's not a lot of time to react or to change direction on some items, but we've been able to, look at some VEs, which we'll talk about later, but, they've been able to bounce things off of us to see if it's, worthy of pursuing and actually spending the effort on.
Yeah, it seems like there's been a lot more value engineering proposals that we'll talk about later because of the ATC process kind of starting down that path. So I guess, Craig, and we've gotten a couple questions from the audience that you may have to, I know you can't say too much about some of this, but maybe you can tell them the rules that were in place about, did the other bidder, can you tell us if the other bidder used an ATC, and then what if there were any other unused ATCs, do they remain sealed versus design build where you pay a stipend and can actually use those?
Yeah, the other bidder on the project was a base plans bid, so they did not use ATCs. And we had, during the process, we had one other contractor besides Emory Sap that pursued ATCs. And so that contractor got those approved, got permission to use those in their bid, and they elected not to bid the project. Now, because of the rules of the ATC process, and because we do not pay stipends to those contractors for their work, we do not own those ATCs, and therefore they do remain confidential because they're property of that contractor. And so I can't share any details on those. But there was one other that did pursue and had approved ATCs. They just elected not to bid the job.
So, and this is a question that probably everyone can answer, so maybe we'll just go around the horn on it. We've talked about some cautions about the project, but if others are considering the project, what is the one thing you think they should know or consider changing if they were implementing an ATC? I know there's other DOTs and municipalities on here, so if they're considering this right now, what's one thing you'd want them to know? Josh, why don't you start this off?
Yeah, really, from a contractor's perspective, the biggest evaluation that a contractor is going to go through is the risk assessment. When you're looking at an ATC, as Craig mentioned earlier, this project, the design and risk with design fell on the contractor's shoulders. There was a lot of conversation early with us as well as MoDOT regarding who is taking responsibility of various items. MoDOT had a good good executive summary of how the ATC process worked. But as we dove further into the details, we talked further about questions: who owns what risk, and that's what the contractor really has to evaluate: is where is that fine line of sharing risk. And from MoDOT's perspective, they did a good job with understanding, as a contractor has to own more risk, that only drives up potential pricing or may push them away from an ATC. As we discussed it further, it was a good partnership with MoDOT understanding what risk concerns we had. They ensured that all contractors were treated fairly in regards to information provided by MoDOT related to existing ground, geotechnical information. So those were some of the risk factors on this job that we really had to dive into the weeds on. But I would really encourage any owner to be open-minded when evaluating risk. You'll get a lot more appetite when dealing with a contractor when you know where the risk stands and you have a shared view of the risk and who's responsible for it.
Daniel, I guess staying on the Emory SAP side before we move on to others, anything you think someone should know or consider changing?
Yeah, my perspective is from the construction side, obviously. So with this project being the way it was, and the design being owned by the contractor, and being on a tight time frame with the schedule, we started a lot of the construction almost like a design build, with preliminary plans and grading models and stuff like that, rather than a full set of plans. So there's a lot of coordination that needs to be done with the consultant on that one. Bartlett West has been great working with us. I know we had a lot of design coordination meetings early on the project to really hone in on the details and answer any questions and get drawings prioritized for items that we were going to be approaching first. So I'd say my only suggestion is just to have good coordination with your design partner on it, just like a design build.
Thanks, Daniel. Bruce, what do you think as far as people should know?
Yeah, of course, I worked through the procurement with Emory SAP, and then we working with them through the construction phase. And Daniel's exactly right. It's definitely moved like a design build job based on the schedule. Dirt was flying on this literally not too long after the job was awarded, so we were playing catch up on the design. We had some preliminary design done, but the redesign, we were working very frantically trying to catch up with Emory SAP. That's one thing to keep in mind, especially and this is maybe unique to this job just because of the size of it and the schedule. But for those that want to get into it, that's something to keep in mind, and something probably can be improved. I might add to, and here again, this was a product of the schedule, and I know MoDOT was really pushed on this, but there was, the plans had been on the shelf for quite a while, and we started with an older set of plans, and then they updated some of that, and whenever we got those, the timelines were pretty tight to kind of finish up what we needed to do on the ATC phase and get that information to Emory SAP so they could bid the job with the ATCs. So it's mainly probably schedules was one of the biggest things that would have been nice to improve if we could have, or add some time in there, but realize there were definitely a lot of outside factors that were influencing this project.
Craig, you've covered, probably answered this some throughout, but maybe if you could summarize it as one thing. You lived a lot of things here, but if one thing you would want someone else to know if they're in your shoes, or maybe even consider changing, what would you suggest?
Yeah, of course the getting information out there early is better. That's, if I had it to do over again, I would have worked a lot harder on getting that out early. And I'll echo what Josh said on the risk. Just be willing to have those discussions. And in my mind, it all boils down to flexibility. And as an owner, you have to be flexible in what you're willing to accept with your project if you go through this process, because that contractor is going to get that set of plans and they're going to look at it and they're going to tear it apart and they're going to hit you with things that you never thought you were going to be hit with. And so just heads up and approach it as a partnership. If it becomes adversarial, it defeats the purpose of the project. And I'm not saying it was all butterflies and rainbows and that it went perfectly and all that, but because it didn't. But we approached it as a partnership. We worked together and we got through it. And so everybody out there, just know that there's huge savings opportunities that can be had if you use this on the right project. And your contractors, your industry partners are out there, and they will help you gain those cost savings. So just my advice is just to be flexible.
Yeah, I think Josh mentioned it earlier, but I want to echo the great partnership. I mean, MoDOT does a great job in general on all your innovative delivery projects. But Craig, you guys, we threw a lot of weird stuff at you. Push the limits. That's what we're supposed to do in these to try and save money. And you guys did a great job of just being great partners throughout it and making sure it never became us versus them or anything. So I'm going to, I guess, pivot a little bit because we've spent a fair amount of time talking about ATCs. I'm sure there's people on here just wondering about other things on the project. And so sticking in the innovative delivery type arena, innovation doesn't stop in the MoDOT and Emory SAP world at once the bid happens. So I know you guys have a value engineering process that some of the municipalities and others that may be listening in aren't as familiar with what exactly that is. So Craig, can you enlighten people on what exactly a MoDOT value engineering proposal or process is?
Yeah, sure. Our value engineering process, we actually have two different phases of it. And one of those can occur before or during the design of the project. And that's where we'll get together and we'll invite in a diverse team of MoDOT experts who aren't necessarily familiar with the project, and they'll sit and go through all the details and they'll come up with ideas on how to cut cost out of the project. And on this project, we ended up doing that 3 times over the years. And 2 times were pretty early in the process, early 2000s. One of those times was maybe a year before we started updating maybe a year before the base plans had to be completed. And so we did do some of that work up front to try to identify some savings ideas. And there's also, I think the part we want to dig deeper into is the value engineering that occurs after the project is awarded. And so the ATCs are changes before the project is awarded. So value engineering is changes after the project is awarded. And so just keep in mind this process is available to whomever wins the job. Could have been an ATC bidder or a non-ATC bidder. We had on this job what we call a post-award value engineering workshop. And that takes it a step further, where we actually require a workshop after project award, where MoDOT and the contractor come together, and the contractor is required to bring value engineering ideas to that workshop for us to discuss. And the big difference on value engineering proposals is that the contractor gets to keep a percentage of the cost savings from those if they're implemented. And so if the contractor comes up with a value engineering idea that's equal or better quality than what's in the base plans, they get to keep 50% of the savings of that. And if they provide a lesser quality product, maybe lesser quality, but it's still acceptable under the goals and the idea of the project, they'll get a 25%. They get to retain 25% of the savings on that. And so, again, it's after the award, the contractors bring these And here at MoDOT, we pretty much accept VEs of any dollar amount, or we'll even accept a VE for $0, which could be for a material or construction method that speeds the construction process versus the cost savings. And so we're pretty open on what we'll entertain on those VE proposals. And the idea for us behind this is it creates a culture of innovation and partnership between the owner and our contractors. And it also shares all cost savings, no matter how small, while acknowledging that those cost savings are important to a project.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, when you mention culture of innovation, I think of my working with SAP. It seems like you guys are always, trying to innovate it. So Josh, under that, can you talk a little bit about how you all approach innovation and throughout construction of the project? Again, not just stopping at bid. How do you approach it throughout the whole thing?
Well, I mean, it really starts with the owners and partners that we work for. A lot of the jobs today, whether it's in the public, private sector, are expecting projects to be completed faster than ever. Rather than being against an accelerated project, we try to look at it as an opportunity, and we don't stop. When during the pursuit phase, we want the owners, if we are successful in winning a project, to see that same inspiration throughout our project team, which Daniel and our construction team kind of spearheads it in the field. And honestly, it's kind of a trickle down effect. We're fortunate to be an employee-owned company, so it's top to bottom. Our staff really looks for ways to keep us competitive and drive costs down for our owners. You see some of the best ideas we hear about come from our field leaders or staff. So we're blessed to have really good team members. You're really seeing it throughout the whole project, through the pursuit phase as well as construction, and we're just excited to bring this project to the state line and open a new section of the interstate.
So Daniel, you're kind of leading the construction effort here. Can you give us a little bit of information about what value engineering proposals you all have proposed and have been implemented? And I think you sent me a slide that I'll pull up while you start going through that.
Okay. Yeah, we've got 4 main VEs so far on the project. I think, as Craig mentioned, we had a VE workshop at the beginning of the project. I think the first 3 were vetted and started to develop in that workshop. So just going through them, the first one we submitted was to decrease the median shoulder pavement from the full depth 9 inches to a 7-inch pavement depth, which doesn't seem like a lot, but over a 5-mile length for this project, that 2 inches adds up and generated pretty substantial savings. We were able to move forward with that one. We've also talked about, we redesigned the Route 90 interchange bridge, and in doing that, changed it from a 2-span bridge to a single span bridge. In doing that, we brought it up to current design standards since it was designed years ago. And obviously that resulted in savings, and it also decreased the construction duration for that bridge and our impact to Route 90 itself that is closed during the duration of construction for the bridge. The third one we submitted was an optimization of the median drainage. A lot of the median drainage, as I mentioned, was optimized in our ATC areas, but in those areas that were outside of the ATC areas, we were able to apply the same logic to those and decrease some of the longer longitudinal drainage runs, route those to the outside, and decrease cost there, and also long-term maintenance cost. And then the final one that we're kind of working through right now is redesigning the US 71 flyover bridge MSE walls. We simplified the design on those walls to accelerate construction, able to decrease the size of the walls. It'll decrease some drainage structures that are associated with them. And this is an example of one that we probably wouldn't have pursued if it weren't for already being partnered with Bartlett and West and having them involved in the contract. We've got a tight time frame on building this bridge and MSE walls, and this one kind of came about a little bit late, but it seems like it's going to be a good VE for everybody.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, to your point that you made there at the end, it just seems like the innovation kept going a lot because of the already being involved and just being under that mode of looking at those plans and trying to figure out what you can improve on every day. I will, I guess, just give a heads up to our audience. I guess we do have these guys scheduled till 11 or till 12, so we have about 25 minutes left. I have a question or two of my own and a question or two from different audience members, but definitely if you guys have anything you want to ask about the project, feel free. All areas of questions open. So a couple questions I did get from the audience. One, Craig, this is going back a little bit in time, so hopefully you remember. If not, we'll try and help you out here. But do you remember how much before the letting you put the plans out so that people could start looking at those and starting to develop their ATCs? Did we lose you, Craig?
Yeah, I should be back, I hope.
Yep. Yeah.
Internet dropped out for whatever reason. I didn't hear the question.
Okay. Yeah. So do you remember how far ahead of the letting you put plans out so that contractors and consultants could start looking into what ATCs they might want to propose?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact date, but I think it was around October when we posted the first set, and that was the 2007 on the shelf set. And so it wasn't, that set of plans wasn't really updated at all from what we had, but the thing that was important was that we told them at that time we wouldn't be changing any horizontal and vertical alignment. And so no major, we wouldn't be changing any of the drainage, stuff like that. So no real major changes at that point. We did tell them there would be minor changes. And I think it was probably, we really didn't get the final set in until December, which was just about 2 months before the letting. That was when the signed and sealed base plan set came out.
Okay, thank you. And then Daniel, I'll send this one to you because I believe you're managing all parts of this bypass. So can you help the audience know when it's scheduled to be open, and maybe is Arkansas or Missouri going to be open quicker, and can you influence that at all?
Yeah, so Emory Sap had 3 sections of this bypass. One of them was the north job tying into the Arkansas state line. That one's already completed. That completed earlier this fall. Obviously the Missouri side that we're talking about now, and then the Bella Vista US 71 interchange. The interchange and this project are on track to finish right around the same time, which will be early to mid next fall. So yeah, they're going to complete basically the same time.
Thanks, Daniel. Josh, you may be reading the last question that just came in, a good question, but you may want to, there may be some secret sauce in there that you may end up wanting to dance around, but how can you address some of the VE ideas? Why some of the VE ideas that went through the value engineering proposals went that way versus the ATC? I know timing was some issues, but there are also some other things that came up.
Yeah, really timing was a lot of it. It was abbreviated duration that we had to really fully evaluate the base design and look for opportunities. And honestly, there just wasn't enough time to explore every idea that came to mind We knew that our construction staff was going to continue the innovation well after we were done. We looked for the ones that really moved the needle, and we knew with our staff that there's just things they're going to come up with that we hadn't explored or hadn't thought of yet. So kind of like I mentioned earlier, our full team approach is what really allows us to continue innovation even after the job's awarded.
Would it be fair to say that the fact that you guys were paying for the design versus, in some previous ones that MoDOT was, that probably had some impact too of, how far down a rabbit hole do you dig when you're taking on that risk?
Yeah, you really got to weigh out whether it's worthwhile to invest the dollars in design if it's necessary for an ATC idea prior to being awarded a contract. That's the chicken and egg thing that any contractor has to play with, because it's real dollars that go into the design side. And although the design costs were minimal compared to a true design build project, without the opportunity for a stipend, it's money you're out if you're not the successful bidder. So you do have to weigh those in. You do need to find the real needle movers if you're going to invest true design dollars. But as I mentioned earlier, just because you have an ATC process doesn't require you to go down the rabbit hole of investing design dollars. There's a lot of ATC ideas that MoDOT entertains through just normal value engineering process that they would probably likely entertain through just the ATC approach with no design.
Yeah, and Todd, if I can jump in real quick. The reason, maybe some of the reasons some of these weren't evaluated was that we had placed a limit on the number of ATCs that each contractor could submit, and that limit was 3. And so the reason for that was at the beginning of this project, we were thinking, well, what if we get 5 contractors pursuing ATCs and we have 10 ATC proposals from each contractor, and our staff just didn't have the availability or the time to sit down and vet those all out and check the quantities thoroughly and all that. So we limited it to 3, and we had a minimum dollar amount savings requirement on it. I don't remember what that was off the top of my head, or it could be a construction time savings. And so there were those couple of minimum requirements limited to 3. And as the process moved along, we realized we weren't going to get 10 contractors. We had 2, and we realized that we could start entertaining more. And so we did modify the process a little bit to let those ATCs, we let some ATCs be combined into a single package. The only stipulation was if, for example, Emory Sap did some culvert redesign, some realignment changes and some construction method changes on the culverts. We let them lump that in with their vertical alignment change on the south end of the job. And the only stipulation was that had to remain a package. They couldn't pick and choose which ones they do after the award. So that might have been why the numbers were a bit limited, is because we had set that limit.
Yep. Craig, I guess several may be a way in on this, but this might be a good one for you to start with. Some questions about just the timing and, obviously schedule was an issue on the project. So looking back, do you feel like you gave the right amount of time to the ATC versus the construction, or would you want to change that at all? Obviously, you would want to give everything more time if you could, but knowing you had an end date, are you happy with the balance you gave it?
Yeah, I was going to say, and my management's probably not going to agree with this, but I'm always in favor of giving more time. And I think the more time you get, the more sharpened your pencil can get on your proposals and stuff. But looking back, I think maybe a couple of months would have been good. You don't have to drag it out. If you drag it out too long, you risk getting into details that just bog you down and you don't get anywhere. But with trying to get the base plans done and other job responsibilities and the availability of our review team and all that, it was in my opinion, a little too compressed and could have used a little more time.
Josh, I guess you want, if you knew it had to be open at the date that you're currently having it open, how would you have changed the time? Do you like the way it went, or would you have given more time to the ATC process?
Well, early on, we were a little bit nervous about how accelerated the total process was, all the way from the ATC pursuit phase through the construction phase. But as we got further into it, and through our one-on-one confidential meetings with MoDOT, we felt pretty good about where we were heading and kind of the team approach. As Craig touched on earlier, if you don't enter these with a team approach and they become adversarial, then likely we would have went down the path of pursuing the base design. There just wasn't enough time to essentially turn the ship, if you sort of speak, to go a different direction. But the team approach with MoDOT, FHWA, Bartlett West, and ourselves really worked out well for the abbreviated time we had.
Okay, well, I guess definitely we have 15 minutes left. Don't have to use all the time, but if anybody out there has any questions, I'll buy you a couple minutes to type them up and enter them by giving these guys a softball question. This is it's an interesting project. I mean, this is the kind of project that you don't get very often. Greenfield, big earthwork, lots of cool stuff. So, Bruce, maybe I'll start with you. What's your favorite thing about this project?
I think you hit the nail on the head. You don't get a lot of opportunities to work on projects like this. I mean, I've been in this industry, in this business for 35 plus years, and can honestly say I really haven't had this level of involvement on a project this large. You just don't see them like this, and there's a lot of things going on, and then kind of having the blank, I wouldn't say blank, totally blank check, but kind of having the freedom to go in and do some innovative things in here, I think was a big plus. But and then the other thing with this process, which is really positive, and it's very similar to design build, is the kind of synergy that gets built between the designer, the contractor, and then the owner too. The three-legged stool, I guess, so to speak. And everybody, when we had the one-on-one meetings, we were able to, bring those ideas to them early and get their input on them, and come out with a really good product, I think.
Okay, always easiest for the first guy, so it's going to get harder as we go. Josh, you want to talk a little bit about what you've enjoyed about this project?
Yeah, really, this entire corridor has been exciting for us. We were successful on the 2 Arkansas projects that bid back in July the previous year. Seeing those come to light and then being successful on the MoDOT jobs. So just looking at the change from our frequent visits, try to get down there at least once a month. What our teams can produce in execution of these contracts, all 3 of them together, is eye-opening. You go down every couple of weeks and you see massive changes on all 3 projects, and just to know we're bringing that interstate together for 2 states we really call home, and a lot of our employee owners live and work in that area daily. They're excited to work on it and be a part of it too. So really landing all 3 of them was the most exciting part of it for us.
Daniel, you want to add on anything there?
Yeah, just to add on to what Josh said, and what you said, this was a greenfield job with large excavation quantities. So for me, it's pretty exciting just to be able to use our fleet and run wide open on a job like this and see what we can do and what we can produce in a short amount of time without a whole lot of things in our way. And then also what Josh said, it's just it gives us a sense of pride to be involved in 3 different segments of this project that's going to provide such an improvement to the I-49 corridor in that region.
Craig, you've probably lived this one longer than any of us, so maybe you have a unique perspective on what you really enjoyed.
Yes, I was going to note that I was one of the designers on this project when it first, we had a consultant, I think, work it up through preliminary plans, and then it came in-house for right-of-way plans. And so I've been involved with it on and off since early 2000s at least. And so it's kind of personal for me, and pretty exciting to see it get done, and to even be project manager on it when it's gotten done. And the one last thing I need to mention is just the overall scope of this and how it ties into the really big picture. And this is the last 5 miles in Missouri. And if you count the Arkansas projects, when this thing gets done, I-49 is going to be done between Kansas City and Fort Smith. And that's going to be a huge deal for Missouri and Arkansas. And just think about the opportunities for connectivity and for economic development and freight movement, improved travel times and improved safety that are going to be a result of this project. And not just in the southern part of Missouri or the northwest part of Arkansas, but through that whole corridor. And I think we all should consider ourselves pretty fortunate to be a part of it, and look forward to its completion.
Okay. While we were talking there was another good question come in. I guess, Bruce, I may ask you to address the first part of this, and then Craig, you can maybe address the later part. So the question is, how far were the ATCs developed prior to bidding, and then how were quantity changes handled post-award? So Bruce, you want to talk a little bit about how far we took the design prior to bidding?
Yeah. So we had to at least get them far enough along that we could get some quantities that we felt comfortable with, because Emory Sap was going to have to bid, the ATC quantities. That is one thing. It's, I guess, maybe a little different too than design build, but I mean, you have to provide some kind of preliminary design enough that they can price it in their bid. So we had, the major kind of items that we looked at, and kind of in conjunction with Emory Sap, they did a lot of the grading. They took responsibility for the grading modeling on this with their software, and then they were able to develop their own quantities on that based on some of the alignments we gave them. But it was pretty, I can't really give you a percentage, but it was pretty rough, and definitely there weren't any plans developed. We were working off of very preliminary drawings, and enough that we felt like we could get some conceptual quantity, or quantities that were defined enough that could be biddable. There's a lot of risk there too, but it was in conjunction with the contractor.
Craig, you want to address how you all were going to handle post-award design, quantity changes?
Yeah, most of the items will remain at contractor risk for the quantities, and so overrun or underrun, those won't be adjusted for ATC areas. We did, as the owner, end up accepting the risk on a few items. Josh had mentioned earlier, the geotech is the big one. We're running into a few issues out there about the rock not being where we thought it was, and so that will be ultimately what we'll do as the owners. We'll fly that with LiDAR, and we'll compare sections of what we thought it was versus what it turned out to be, and we'll end up compensating for that. But that was one of those items we specifically accepted risk on. All other risk is contractor.
Josh, anything you want to add to the design level or quantity stuff?
Yeah, really, prior to bid, the level of detail we had was comparable to what a design build project would have. So we really had a go through with a fine tooth comb with Bartlett West and get a real feel for what we thought was a level of design that we could put an accurate number to. So there's risk with all of it. There's items that are going to overrun. There's items that are going to underrun. We know that, similar to a design build, and that risk falls on us. So we had to find a way to get comfortable in a very short amount of time. So all in all, things are working out pretty well. They had a good design to start with. We really didn't see any massive changes in anything we had developed preliminary before the bid. Nothing that got holes shot in it. So right now, everything's looking good.
Sounds good. Well, that wraps up our questions, and I know we're getting really close to lunchtime, so I'm sure everybody would be just fine ending this a few minutes early. So I'll probably go ahead and do that. I guess appreciate the audience, everybody that was able to join us today. We very much enjoyed the questions and the participation. Made my job as moderator easy, not to have to make stuff up on the fly. And then appreciate Emory Sap, MoDOT, and Bartlett West for joining us today and being on the roundtable. I know took time out of your day, but it was I think great information to share with the participants. And then finally, thanks to all the great comments that have come in from the audience. Appreciate the kind words that have come in from everyone. So thank you all who have done that. So appreciate it, and we'll let you all go for the day. But thank you again for joining us, and check out more webinars that may be coming up in the near future.